Over the last year or so, there's been this massive debate raging about artificial intelligence. Is it this energy-guzzling monster that's about to completely wreck our climate goals, or is all the hype, all the panic just overblown? Well, the truth, as we're about to see, is this really fascinating and honestly pretty complicated paradox.
So what's the real story here? Is AI an environmental train wreck just waiting to happen? Or are we getting so good at efficiency that we're solving the problem faster than we're creating it? To really get to the bottom of this, we've got to look at one single year that basically changed the entire conversation.
And that year was 2025. It was a total game changer. It all kicked off in January when this startup, DeepSeek, came out of nowhere claiming they'd achieved some revolutionary new efficiency, which sent some serious shockwaves through the market. Then, in April, the International Energy Agency dropped its huge Energy and AI report, giving us the first real comprehensive global picture. And then, the big one. In August, Google did something nobody expected. They actually opened up their books and showed us the data on their AI energy use. These three events really frame the whole story.
All right, let's start with part one of the paradox, what I'm calling the efficiency miracle. Because when Google finally released its data, the numbers were genuinely shocking, but probably not for the reason you're thinking. Get this, a single typical prompt on Google's Gemini AI, it uses just 0.24 watt-hours of electricity. I mean, what does that even mean in the real world? Well, it's about the same amount of energy you'd use to watch TV for 9 seconds. That's it. It's this incredibly tiny number that just completely flew in the face of the whole AI is an energy hog narrative, at least when you look at it one prompt at a time. So where is that tiny little sip of energy actually going? Well, no surprise, the specialized AI chips, the TPUs, are doing most of the heavy lifting. But the real stunner is that number at the bottom, data center overhead. You know, things like cooling, lighting, it's only 8%. This just shatters that old rule of thumb that, like, half the power in a data center is just spent on keeping the building from melting. It shows you just how insanely efficient these modern facilities have become. And check this out. This progress is moving at a wild pace. In just 1 year, from May 2024 to May 2025, Google made its AI systems 33 times more energy efficient. 33! And this wasn't some single magic bullet. It was a whole combination of things. Better hardware, smarter algorithms, more streamlined systems. A 33-fold improvement in a single year isn't just progress, it's a total quantum leap. Okay, so it seems like the problem is solved, right? We're getting crazy efficient, everything's great. Well, not so fast. Just as we're celebrating, we slam right into the other side of the paradox, the demand tsunami. Because all those amazing efficiency gains are happening while the demand for AI is just exploding. You don't have to take my word for it. This quote from Google's own head of AI infrastructure, Amin Vahdat, it says everything. The goal? To double their AI compute capacity every 6 months. You do the math on that. That's a 1,000-fold increase in just 4 to 5 years. This is not steady, predictable growth. This is a frantic, exponential race to build more, faster. And this brings us to this classic idea from economics called the Jevons paradox. Basically, it says that when technology makes something cheaper or more efficient to use, we don't end up using less of it. We actually end up using way more. Think about it. As AI gets cheaper and better, we find more and more uses for it. ChatGPT queries have already jumped 10-fold since 2024. The result? Those incredible efficiency gains are getting completely swallowed by this monster wave of new demand. And the scale of this demand is just mind-boggling. The International Energy Agency projects that by 2030, the amount of electricity eaten up by all the world's data centers will be the same as the entire annual consumption of Japan. We're talking about the world's 4th largest economy. That's how big this is getting. So where does this fit into the whole global picture? Well, traditional industry is still the biggest driver of new electricity demand. No shocker there. But look at data centers. They only account for about 8% of the new demand, but their growth rate, it's one of the fastest of any sector out there, right up there with the massive switch to electric vehicles. It's a small piece of the pie, but it's growing at an incredible speed. This tsunami of demand creates another huge problem. See, it's not just about how much power AI needs. It's about the kind of power it needs. And this is where AI's very specific, very demanding requirements start to clash, big time, with the way our energy grid has been moving. Here's the fundamental mismatch, right? On one side, you've got renewables like solar and wind. They're great, but they're intermittent. They only generate power when the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. On the other side, you have AI data centers. They require 99.999% uptime. They need what energy folks call baseload power, a constant, steady, 24/7 stream of electricity that never, ever, ever shuts off. By themselves, these two things just don't play well together.
So what's the result? Big tech is making this hard pivot toward what's called firm power, energy sources that are reliable 24/7. And more, that has meant one thing: nuclear. You have Microsoft partnering up to renovate the infamous 3 Mile Island plant. Amazon is pouring $500 million into nuclear startups. Google is signing deals left and right for power from next-gen nuclear and geothermal plants. This is a massive strategic shift, and it's being driven almost entirely by AI's need for absolute reliability.
But the impact of this whole AI boom goes way beyond just the electricity bill. It turns out there's a whole series of hidden costs and bottlenecks that are starting to pop up all over the system.
Let's talk about water for a second. In 2022 alone, Google's data centers drank up 5 billion gallons of water, mostly just for cooling. That's a 20% jump in a single year. And because a lot of these data centers are built in areas that are already struggling with drought, the AI industry is now in direct competition with cities and farms for a resource that's getting more and more scarce.
And then there's this bottleneck that almost nobody saw coming: transformers. Yeah, those big metal boxes you see at power substations. The lead time to get a new, large power transformer, which you absolutely need to connect the data center to the grid, is now over 143 weeks. That's almost 3 years. You can't build a new gigawatt-scale data center if you can't get the basic parts to plug it in.
And that big pivot to nuclear power? Well, it doesn't solve all the problems. In some ways, it just creates new ones. As big tech dives headfirst into nuclear, it runs straight into the incredibly complex and fragile uranium fuel cycle. This whole multi-step process, from digging ore out of the ground to fabricating fuel pellets for a reactor, it has its own really serious vulnerabilities.
Because, as it stands right now, the United States is incredibly dependent on other countries. It imports over 95% of the uranium it uses. And that really crucial step, enrichment, that's dominated by Russia and China. They control about 60% of the world's capacity. So when you hear about plans to quadruple U.S. nuclear power to meet all this new demand from AI and other sectors, you have to realize that this already fragile supply chain is about to be put under some enormous strain.
And that, right there, is the AI energy paradox. On one hand, you have these revolutionary gains in efficiency. On the other, they're being completely wiped out by an exponential explosion in demand. You have this big push for green energy, but it's clashing with AI's desperate need for 24/7 power. And you have mind-blowing technological progress that's running up against very real physical bottlenecks and fragile global supply chains. It all leads to one final, really crucial question. In this global race for AI supremacy, what price are we as a society actually willing to pay?